How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks.
How's your day?
Long.
Was it?
Yeah, I didn't really sleep very well last night. It was very windy.
Yeah, we had a lot of it around our way as well.
And
a bit wet today as well.
Yeah. No, the wind woke me up at 2:30 and I didn't really get back to sleep again. So,
blimey.
yeah, a bit tired. But anyway, the show must go on.
Of course, as ever. Yeah.
And that show is...
It's the Gerry Anderson podcast, pod number 35.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's get started. Let's go.
Spectrum is green.
The Gerry Anderson Podcast with Jamie Anderson and Richard James.
It's pod 35.
That was
just
almost
better.
slightly deafening there, Richard. Thanks very much.
Sorry about that.
That's quite
Sorry
all right.
if I woke you, everybody out there. In the real world.
Yeah. Well, if they're starting their Monday morning commute with you going pod 35, then they'll certainly be awake now.
Yeah. Well, I consider I've done them a favour.
You have. We always try to do you favours here on the Gerry Anderson podcast.
Yes, here we are, pod 35. I am Richard James, and you are?
Jamie Anderson.
Yeah,
And
we're here every week talking about all things Gerry Anderson related, aren't we?
that
really?
stuff. That's what we do.
Yeah. Mostly talking about all things Gerry Anderson related.
Sometimes we go off topic,
we do.
slightly tangential, but
Yeah,
mostly
that's
just
okay,
that.
isn't it?
Yeah, and we do everything from a bit of news,
Yeah.
some fab facts,
Yeah.
some listener emails,
Yeah, a bit of an interview.
a bit of an interview. You're right, it's half an interview today. With
another two-parter.
It is, yeah, it's with Marcus Hearn this week. And
Marcus Hearn, who is?
was Dad's official biographer.
Yeah.
And they got on very well, spent a lot of time together. And
Great.
I wanted to ask Marcus more about Dad as a person. Still related to his work, but a lot of the stuff kind of focuses on, he was a creative genius and all the amazing teams and the shows, but I wanted to get a little bit more of a personal view, and that's what we've got here, and it's really quite
lovely.
interesting. So hopefully you will all enjoy that. And then, of course, Richard, your favourite bit after that, which is...
The Randomiser from Chris Dale, of course.
which you always listen to in a slightly weird, obsessive way with a very little happy expression on your face.
I do, that's right. I curl up in a little ball in the corner of my bedroom with my headphones on.
Yeah, it's very sweet.
And I just drift away to the soporific sounds of Chris Dale and the Randomiser.
So let's see what he's got in store later on in the show. So,
Yeah,
hurrah!
that'd be great. Yeah. Yes, we also do have some listeners' emails, as you say, and I've also got some tweets to read out because you can get in touch with us on Twitter, either by tagging I'm Jamie Anderson or me, Richard N. James, and hashtag us Gerry Anderson Podcast. For example, did you know that Benji Clifford has made the podcast theme available online, as he tweeted this week?
I had seen that, yes.
So you can find him on Twitter and follow the link. You can find him at _Bonj.
BONJ.
That's right, exactly. James Pilson-Wood tweeted to say, love my Mondays with a podcast. And it's a double this week, podcast and Fab Live. Yes, it was indeed last week. That's right, James. And working from home and having decorating done. Going to be a good week. I really like the three of you together. The top gear of Gerry Anderson. That's you, me and Chris.
Oh.
I don't know which one I am.
Well, I was going to say, are we the grand tour of Gerry Anderson now? Because
Yeah, we
Top
probably
Gear,
are.
I don't know who the presenters are now.
No, because even Matt LeBlanc's leaving, isn't he?
Yeah.
And also he says, thanks for the Firestorm theme, which, yes, as you know, is now available on iTunes and Spotify.
I might remind them in the news section about that, actually.
Yeah, great. Excellent. There we are. So, yes, do get in touch with us. Hashtag Gerry Anderson Podcast or email us at podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk. How's that?
Great. It's almost like you've done this 34 times before.
It's almost like that, isn't it? Yeah, I know, that's right. But I'm so looking forward to the Gerry Anderson news. Shall we go straight into the news, Jamie? Or is
Richard, why would you want to do that when there's a...
Well, I think we're ready for some newsy news, aren't we?
I think we need a warm-up to the news, and you know that comes in the form of...
Curses.
This week's Fab Facts.
Oh, here's that quirky music again. Great. There he goes, look.
It's always stuck in my head. So,
I know.
listeners, those
Yes.
of you who are regular will know. Those of you who are regular listeners will know.
I'm glad you cleared that up.
will know that this is the section where we randomly, Richard randomly picks a fab fact from my tome of Gerry Anderson's fab facts.
Yes.
And then we, either go, all right, or we talk about it for a bit, or we discuss it, or we debunk it.
Yeah.
So
depending on the fact.
Exactly. So,
That's right.
Richard, I've got my book here. Are you ready to yell fab to stop me flipping the pages?
I am very ready.
Okay. Then here we go.
Fab.
Ooh.
Nice early one there.
Really nice, really nice. Okay.
What's that?
Ooh.
Oh, that sounds juicy.
Well, is that exciting enough?
What, for the podcast?
I just want to make sure it is. Okay, well, I'm going to go for the first fact on the spread that you've picked.
Okay.
And that is the song that played over the credits, the closing credits of Fireball XL5, which was I Wish I Was a Spaceman
Yes.
by Don Spencer,
Yes.
was actually released and was in the pop charts in 1963.
In the pop charts.
That's what it says in this fact here,
Great.
Richard, in the pop charts.
Oh, how high did it get?
Well, of course, it doesn't say that, does it?
No, that's unfortunate. You're going to do a bit of Googling now, aren't you? I can tell by the look in your
I'm
eye.
going to have a quick look. I don't know if I'll be able to find it, but...
And while you're doing that, tell me, is that the only Gerry Anderson theme to have made it into the pop charts that we know of? Anywhere around the world?
I don't know, Richard.
Well, of course, there's the Thunderbirds theme from 2004, isn't there, the movie?
Yeah,
Busted.
but do you count that as the world of Gerry Anderson? I'm not sure I do.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
You'd think something else would have made it.
Yeah.
Avenues and Alleyways, of course.
Yes.
Tony Christie from The Protectors.
That must have been in the
Yeah,
charts
yeah.
somewhere. There must be like a historical charts website, wasn't there, somewhere? Your search did not produce any results. Right, okay.
Okay, moving swiftly on.
So, after a brief but exhaustive search, it doesn't seem to have got into the top 40.
No.
But if you have access to the charts from 1963 and are able to find it for us, then let us know. But there you go.
Yeah, do let us know.
Yes, there may be others, and we should look into it. Maybe one of the, I can't believe any of the Power Themes 90 releases got in. Do you know those?
Yeah. No, I don't know.
Oh, they're dreadful. A lot
sound
of people
dreadful.
love them, but
Okay.
yeah, they can be discussed another day. Anyway,
Yes,
there you go.
fair enough.
And that is the end of this week's Fab Facts.
Oh, thank goodness, some would say. Yeah, very good, Jamie. Very interesting.
I think I would also say that week.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Ian Jacqueline, by the way, got in touch on Twitter to say, can you imagine what it would have been like if there was a Gerry Anderson podcast in 1969 hosted by your dad, Jamie, and Ed Bishop?
Well, I think most people would have gone, what's a podcast, to be
Yeah.
honest?
Do you think Gerry would have been up for it? Do you
No.
think Gerry would have... No.
No.
Not at all. No. There you go.
Ed would have been up for it, I think, but
Yeah.
no, it wouldn't have been Dad's thing. He much preferred written communication where possible.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, yeah. A blog, maybe.
a blog,
Yeah.
yeah, maybe a blog. Yeah, possibly. I don't know. It's just a weird thought of trying to put the logic into a podcast in 1969. How would people listen to it?
I don't
Is that
know.
a radio
No, I don't think that
programme?
was the point, Jamie. I think you've missed the point, really.
Oh, sorry, it's the content
A
rather
flight
than
of
the...
fancy. A thought experiment. if
Okay,
you will.
fine. Yes. It would have been interesting, but I think Ed would have stolen the show. But they did get on very well, so maybe it would have been quite fun.
Yeah, great. Simon says, it makes my Monday trip to work a laugh. I love the randomiser, and Fab Facts is always a highlight. Well, I think
Except
we may
for
have,
this week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
May have just disabused him of that opinion. And finally, Becca says, having discovered the hashtag Gerry Anderson podcast later in the year, I'm now going back and enjoying the earlier episodes. Pretty sure I saw the Thunderbirds live show back in the day when I was younger, and I must dig out my copy of the 2000s film starring Sophia Miles, who of course was an early interviewee on the podcast.
She was the first, in fact. You say
Was she
early.
now?
She was our first two-parter interview.
Yeah,
And
Right.
yeah, she had a breakfast with me, didn't she?
yes,
She had a
lovely.
huge eggs Benedict with a huge side of avocado, from memory.
Perfect. And Becca, if you did see the Thunderbirds live show back in the day, well, that might well have been with me, because I did that for a few dates up and down the country.
Yeah. Could well have been you. Or it could have been Andy Dawson and Gavin
Yeah.
Robertson, or
Could have been Wayne Forrester.
Wayne Forrester.
Paul Kent.
Yes. Any of those people.
Tristram Shapiro, I think, was another one.
Well, there you go.
But we're quite a small and select band of brothers.
Oh, you are?
A few of us who
In fact, are there 5 of you?
There might be 5 or 6, yeah, something like that.
Because 5 will be Tracy brothers, you see. That's what I was thinking.
I like it. I feel a reunion coming on.
Which Tracy brother would you be, Richard?
Well, I played Virgil, of course.
Oh, well, Virgil's the best one, so you would say that, wouldn't you?
No, I did play Virgil.
No, I know. I know that.
No, I'm just saying, I did. No,
okay.
I actually did that.
Okay, Richard, you're Virgil. Fine. Anyway, should we move on? I'm sure we can do some news stuff, unless you've got more tweets you'd like to...
No, I'll read out some more tweets a little later on, but for now, let's have some news.
It's the Gerry Anderson news, as Richard sort of said.
Yeah, I did, yeah. Only much better than that.
You did. No, so we're a little bit light on news this week,
Well,
Richard.
actually, hang on, Jamie,
but it's always
I do
good
have
news.
Hang on, I have some exciting breaking news.
Have you just been handed a piece of paper?
Hold on to your hats.
Okay.
Jeff Tracy has turned up on a beach in Cornwall.
What?
Yes, it's true. This comes from Cornwall Live, who say that rising from the deep, Thunderbirds Are Go once again after a plastic minifigure washed ashore on a Cornish beach after more than 50 years. The plastic model from the long-running 1960s animated TV series was found on the sand at Watergate Bay on the north coast near Newquay. The figure is a 1966 Jeff Tracy, the founder of International Rescue. It was Jeff's sons, Scott, John, Virgil, Gordon and Alan, who crewed the iconic Thunderbirds rescue craft. The toy was discovered by Emily Stevenson, co-founder of the environmental campaigners Beach Guardian, during a sweep for plastic litter on Wednesday. She said, "I went back to Watergate Bay to assess the plastics, and lying there was this. It's a 1966 Kellogg's cereal minifigure of Thunderbird's Jeff Tracy. This little green man has probably been in the ocean for over 50 years. How's that for news?
Well, I mean, didn't quite live up to the headline. And just doing a little bit of research while you were reading that, Richard.
Yeah.
On Cornwall Live's Twitter feed,
Yes.
there's a response from somebody called I'm Electric, who responds to the article and says, "I bought that on Saturday from a charity shop and my little boy dropped it on the beach on Sunday."
Oh.
Now, whether that is true or not, I don't know.
Shame.
I sort of want it to be because of the big drama Cornwall
Yes.
Live have made of it, and actually no, it was just been there over the weekend. But either way, a lovely little find. But I mean, even in '66, I think I would have been disappointed getting a green plastic Jeff Tracy that it just does nothing. It's got no detail. It's
how odd. It's strange, isn't
Yeah.
it? Funny little thing. You can find it on Twitter and have a look. You can see a picture of it on the beach there.
yeah. We'll post the link and you can have a read. And it may have been debunked by then anyway.
It may have been. Interestingly enough, other finds included plastic toy soldiers, some toothbrushes, a Lego dragon, and a ship's telegraph from the ship Liberty, which was wrecked at Pendeen in 1952.
Gosh.
Find all sorts of stuff, yeah.
Quite a variety. So whether reclaimed from the deep or dropped on the beach, who knows?
Yeah,
but,
who knows?
There you go. I hope it goes to a good home.
Yes, exactly. That's right.
So Richard, on to the less exciting news.
Oh, yeah, go on then.
You did mention it earlier, and I can't remember whether I mentioned it last week or the week before or not, but the Firestorm theme, you know, Richard Harvey's fantastic theme, is out. Is out on iTunes and Spotify and a few other providers for you to purchase and own as an MP3 or whatever format they download in these days.
Yeah.
So yes, do go and grab that if you'd like to. Share it with your chums. It's great for playlists of all types for all moods.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I will offer a bonus prize to anyone who can send us a very short video clip via their phone of them rocking out somewhere to the Firestorm theme.
Ace, yes, great.
Yeah?
I look forward to seeing that.
Send that to podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk.
Fantastic, and let us know if you've downloaded it. We'd love to hear.
Yeah.
Another bit of sort of merch news.
Mm-hmm. Good, we love all that.
You know our Raised on Super Marionation range,
Yes.
Richard, in the Gerry Anderson store?
I do,
I thought that was a rather clever thing that I came up with a few years ago.
You came up with, right?
I did. I thought it was really fun, yeah. Anyway, due to popular demand, it's back and all over a range of bits and pieces. mugs and tees and hoodies and jumpers and all sorts of stuff, because they've been out of stock for a while and people keep requesting them, but also in kiddies sizes. So if you've recently introduced your kids to the worlds of Super Mario Nation and they love it, then I'm sure it was perfectly appropriate for you to advertise the fact that you've indoctrinated them using this T-shirt.
Yes.
So,
absolutely.
Just have a look, search for Raised On in the Gerry Anderson store, shop.gerryanderson.co.uk, and you'll be able to grab whatever you want, really.
Yeah, I'll tell you what else has been out of stock in the Gerry Anderson store, which should be in stock again by the time this podcast goes out.
Yes, Richard,
possibly.
What is that? Is it anything
Copies
to do with Space
yeah,
Precinct, is it?
Signed copies of Space Precinct Unmasked, which I posted to the shop only this week. So
I'm sure everybody will be... Well, they sell out pretty quick, actually, so they're very popular, and justifiably so.
Thank you so much, you're very kind.
Justifiably so that they're so popular.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
I know what you meant.
Good, I'm just checking. In fact, do you know the first production run of the Space Precinct DVDs is almost sold out?
Crikey, very
Amazing.
good.
They've been so popular, it's brilliant.
Yeah.
So thank you if you picked up that and you're enjoying it. Let us know if you're revisiting Space Precinct or indeed visiting it for the first time.
Yeah, do.
And a final bit of news from the Gerry Anderson website this week, Richard. Mm-hmm. 2 nice articles for you to read, both courtesy of the Randomiser's very own Chris Dale.
Excellent.
The 15 Doctors.
Oh, yes.
Not Doctor Who related. It's the 15 medical doctors from the world of Gerry Anderson that Chris has managed to pull together. And also Chris's list of his top 5 favourite funniest episodes from across the Gerry Anderson universe, because you'd often think, a comedy episode of a sci-fi thing, that's going to be terrible, but there are actually some good ones, and Chris lists them there. So there you go. Good. So there's some nice things for you to look at.
Excellent.
That's all I have, though, for the Gerry Anderson news this week. So, yeah.
Do you mean that was the news? That was the news?
That's pretty much what I meant. Thanks.
Thought it might be. Very good, excellent. Well, thank you everyone for joining us again for another podcast. You're listening to Pod 35, and it just remains for me to say before we continue on to some listener emails, do remember to subscribe and rate and review and share with all your friends. You can subscribe to this podcast quite easily on whatever platform you're listening to. Bound to be a button for you to click, which means that you'll get notifications every week and every day that a new podcast drops. And please do leave us a nice review, because we love to read them out on the show, and share us with your friends so they can know that we're here as well.
So they know we exist.
Yes, exactly. So we do have some more tweetings. People have been in touch on Twitter. They've been hashtagging us, hashtag Gerry Anderson Podcast. Pete Kirby got in touch to say he's just discovered that Forces TV, no, I'd never heard of it either, but it's on both Freeview and FreeSat, he says, is showing UFO. DVR set to record. Yes, but I think we knew that already, didn't we, Jamie?
I think I may have slightly impertinently tweeted him to say, yeah, we knew that. In fact, they've been showing it for ages, but it's brilliant that they keep showing it. It's a good sign that it's doing well on there. So
that's right.
I hope that might lead to more things.
Absolutely right. Pebble got in touch to say, I listen every week. Banter and interviews are great. I pay special attention to Newsy News in hope for more Firestorm news. A few weeks ago, you had a whole section on Firestorm updates, which gave me huge satisfaction. Can we have that section every week? Also, how about getting Peter Jackson for an interview? How about that?
I don't think Peter is likely to be available for our podcast for some time. I'd love to chat to him, but he's just so busy. He's probably one of the most inaccessible people because of how busy he is and where he lives compared to where we are.
That's right.
You never know, though. You never know.
Yeah,
there is a sort of an ask out there in the ether. At his company, they're aware that I would like to talk to him at some point. So who knows?
And to Pebble's other point about Firestorm updates, well, updates will be forthcoming when there's news and exciting stuff to tell you.
Yeah, that we can tell. That's the thing. There's new exciting stuff going on, as you've seen, Richard. I've sent you some things recently, haven't you, which are rather cool.
Indeed.
But unfortunately, we're just not in a position to talk about them yet. But rest assured, things are ticking along rather nicely and happening. So there we go.
That's right. Now, Jamie, you also put up a poll on Twitter this week asking people if they listen to the podcast every week.
I did, yes.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad, was it? We got, 42% of respondents said yes, they listen every week. 32% said yeah, sometimes. 26% nope.
But that's great, you see, because a lot of those people replied and said no because I'd never heard of it until now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
See, if everybody who responded said, yeah, I already listened, then you might think there are no more listeners to reach. But,
That's very true.
as we can see from our listening figures. There's more and more of you joining every week, which is brilliant. So please do keep sharing, keep writing those reviews. If you've been listening to 35 pods now and you haven't left us a review, then
you haven't left us,
I'm wounded. Really.
Yeah.
So please do. We'd really love it. And if this little message has made you go and do it, then drop us an email as well, and we'll be extra pleased to acknowledge your review.
Yeah, indeed. Drop us an email at podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk. We love to hear your audio files as well. Every now and then someone sends us a little message via their phone, which we can play out, which we always enjoy. And of course, especially this week, we'd like to see a video of you via your phone rocking out the Firestorm theme wherever you may be.
Yes, and perhaps we'll even make a little compilation video if we get enough.
Yes.
And stick it on YouTube.
Yeah, lovely. That's right. Now, we have had a few listener emails again this week. So maybe.
Yeah, but I've kept it down to 2.
Yeah, okay. All right,
sorry.
So I'll pull the first one out the hatch, all right?
You were going to say it's time for listener emails, and then I really interrupted you.
It's all right. Well, it is time for listener emails.
Well, then, great, because I picked 2 especially for this section.
I have one here, and this one's from Ross. Ross got in touch to say, hello, Jamie and Richard. Hello, Ross. Just wanted to say I'm very much enjoying the podcast. There are funny moments every episode. Only moments, mind you. And the interviews are very captivating. It's great hearing unheard stories from different people that have worked on Gerry Anderson shows. I've only just managed to watch Space Precinct because of the DVD release. What? And I have to say, how is this not more widely popular?
Absolutely.
Yeah, the show is simply fantastic in a way that mirrors Thunderbirds, except in live action. The music, the sets, the special effects, and the characterization gel together to create a true classic. Each episode leaves me wanting more. Once you've done Firestorm, please could you make a second series? There's a thought.
Ross, if only you could see Richard's face right now. Sort of excitement and desperation.
That's it. He continues, I was lucky enough to be able to attend the Firestorm premiere at Comic-Con, and what a buzz that was. I dragged along my housemate, who gets rather tired of my Anderson obsession. Silly puppets are the kind of things he utters when he sees me watching Thunderbirds for the 50th time, and even he was grinning throughout the minisode. I think that means you're onto something. I noticed the Firestorm theme has been released on Spotify, and I love the album artwork. Is there an A3 poster of this available anywhere? It's simply fantastic. My other question, and I apologise for waffling, is about the theme tune itself. I noticed on the Backers Only main titles preview there was an electric guitar over the section just before the end. In the official mini-episode, I noticed that this has been dropped from the main theme. I know this is something really odd to pick on, but why is that? I like both versions of the theme, and I can't wait to hear more music in a full series. Keep up the great work, guys. I'm so pleased the Anderson legacy is living on. As we continue to be buried beneath the avalanche of dark, dramatic, thrilling, and actually quite repetitive originals from the likes of Netflix and Amazon, I've come to quite value my collection of light-hearted and uplifting Gerry Anderson television. I couldn't be happier that Firestorm is moving into becoming a full series. If you need anyone to make the tea on set, please let me know. Cheers, Ross.
Thanks, Ross.
That's great.
Excellent.
Might just get back to you on that. So, A3 poster of the album artwork, the Firestorm artwork.
Well, the cover, yeah. I mean, I'd definitely look at doing that in due course. It's something I want to offer to our backers first.
Yeah.
But, it would be great. I mean, there's all sorts of great stuff we will do along the way.
Of course there is.
But there's a few things to tie down or tie up or sort out first.
Yeah.
As for the theme, Ross...
Yes, the electric guitar.
That's a great aural observation.
Spot, yes.
Yes, so that version, Steve Begg and I really loved it. But we kind of felt that it slightly distracted from the repeat of the melody. So in the version that's on the mini-sode, it's not been dropped. It's actually still there if you listen in. It's just been brought down in the mix a little bit.
Okay.
And in the single version that's been released, it's actually different again, where there's also a new soprano voice, which we weren't able to record before we put the mini-sode out. But Richard Harley was so desperate to layer it in, he got a soprano in especially to record these lovely lines. So if you listen out very carefully, you'll hear a lovely high female voice in there.
I love it the way things sort of evolve. Anyway, the theme tunes. And so on,
I've got all the stems, they call them, all the different layers of music, and it's great stacking them all up and then muting different tracks and seeing how it changes the balance, or just bringing down levels. It almost changes the characteristics of the whole theme, so it's brilliant.
Yes.
But well spotted, Ross.
Yeah, very good, absolutely.
I've got an email, Richard.
Good.
from Jen Whitby.
Hello, Jen. Hi, Jen.
You know Jen. We hear from Jen occasionally.
Yeah.
Although not on the podcast, normally on Fab Live, right?
Indeed.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
Jen says, "Hi, gents. Sorry for taking so long in writing to you again, but thanks to the snow, I finally found some time."
Right, snowed in.
Yeah, that's useful for that, isn't it?
Nothing better to do, yeah.
Thank you for reading out my email all the way back in Pod 26 and Fab Live 20. Your answers to my question were brilliant, and I was really impressed with the speed at which Jamie worked out which shows I'd use on the Christmas e-card I made. I remember. Do you remember we went through
the
them?
logos.
Yeah.
That's right.
It was nicely done, though.
Yes.
I like the new edition of Fab Facts.
Oh, do you now?
Hang on, it's all right. There's a bit for you in here.
Yeah.
It feels like the little brother of Fab or Fib, which unfortunately wouldn't work on the podcast.
Oh, well, we haven't tried, Jen.
Let's not. I would love to explore some of these facts deeper, as I think the fan community could have a right old discussion, particularly on how the facts fit into canon and fanons. That's fan-accepted canons.
Is it?
I'd never heard that word before, but I won't pronounce it correctly.
Yes.
Following on from last week's podcast, that's Pod 33, I would like to wish Richard a happy belated birthday.
Oh, shucks.
On behalf of all the fans of the podcast and Fab Live, please find attached a little e-card I made.
Yes, I saw that. It's very nice.
It was lovely. Thanks, Jen.
Yes,
well, I don't know why I'm thanking you. It wasn't for me.
No, thank you on my behalf. Thanks.
Speaking of birthdays, it was while I was catching up with the latest podcast on YouTube that I discovered some very important dates.
Oh, right. Let's hear them.
On the 30th of January 2017, a little-known Facebook broadcast started, or at least according to YouTube.
Really?
You see the attachment with the screenshot of two young chaps with the original Fab Live background and the highlighted date.
Oh, great.
So happy second birthday to Fab Live,
Wow.
and long may you
Yeah.
continue. I can't believe that.
No.
I also...
The original background there would be in my original spare room with some posters behind us, I think, wasn't it?
which then fell off in Fab Live 3, and then the whole thing went to pot. Yeah.
We don't talk about.
Jen continues, I also made a note of the first broadcast of Pod 0, the pilot. Actually, it's Pod 1, isn't it? This little gem of a podcast will be turning 1 in June.
Wow.
That'll be here before we know it.
Yes, I know. It's around the corner.
I fully agree with previous comments on the request for more new Captain Scarlet merchandise, preferably some gloves, hats and scarves, given the recent weather. Even some fingerless gloves would be appreciated. Looking forward to the next podcast and see you guys for Fab Live.
Ah, lovely, Jen.
Thanks,
Great.
Jen. And so Jen wrote that just before the last Fab Live 21, which is still available on YouTube and Twitch and Facebook if you missed us.
That's right.
And if you didn't miss us, or if you did, then come back for the 4th of March. I don't know what I'm saying, but the 4th of March is Fab Live 22.
Yeah, that's right. Which will be shortly after another important birthday, won't it, Jamie?
St. David's Day?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. You're quite right.
Yeah, very good. So Fab Live is almost monthly feature on now Facebook, YouTube and Twitch, and you can join us and comment live and see us in the flesh, as it were. If you'd like to have anything read out or shown on that, because we'd love to see your videos and your pictures as well, you can get in touch with us at fablive@gerryanderson.co.uk. And if you'd like to get in touch with us here at the podcast, which happens every Monday, you can drop us an email at podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk. Now, Jamie, I don't remember, in the last podcast, I put out a little request for people's favourite Gerry Anderson themes.
You did, I remember.
Yeah, so we had a few responses. James Pilson Wood said the top theme has got to be Thunderbirds, which was his first Gerry Anderson love. Megan says Thunderbirds, as it reminds me of her father, now sadly deceased, who loved military marches, and it grabs her attention every time she hears it. And Mark Simpson Wedge got in touch to give us his top 10, and I thought they deserved to be read out in full.
Oh, lovely. Hang on, let me get a special band in to play a tune for you. Here we go.
So here we are, pop pickers, with your brand new top 10 Gerry Anderson themes, courtesy of Mark Simpson Wedge. At number 10, it's New Captain Scarlet, the first of these themes to have been written by Crispin Morel. Number 9 sees Barry Gray's Stingray theme, which featured in all 39 episodes in 1964. At number 8, it's Joe 90, Loved by All, another classic from classically trained composer Barry Gray. At number 7, another entry for Crispin Morel, with his theme from Gerry's last live-action series, Space Precinct. At number 6, it's Space 1999, Year 1, not the Derek Wadsworth scored Season 2 theme. At number 5, it's the UFO opening, not, strangely, the discordant hum which played over the closing credits. At number 4, Captain Scarlet, Barry Gray's classic theme featuring those iconic drum beats. And at number 3, bang up to date with Richard Harvey's already iconic theme for the new series, Firestorm. At number 2, it's Terrorhawks, another entry for Richard Harvey, giving him 2 places in the top 3. And finally, at number 1, it could only be the iconic theme to beat all iconic themes. It's Barry Gray's timeless Thunderbirds.
God, beautifully delivered, Richard.
There. I don't think there could be much dispute over that, really, could there?
No, I agree. What is in your delivery or the list?
Yeah, my delivery principally, but also the list.
No, it's a good list, Mark. So thank you for that. And I think I probably agree, actually, overall.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool.
All sorts of stuff. How interesting! Richard Harvey got 2 in the top 3.
Yeah, I know.
Because you'd think, wouldn't you? Just think it would be Barry Gray all the way.
Barry Gray all the way was
that's what they used to call
was
him.
the mantra of Century 21.
That's right.
Yes, no, that's brilliant. And obviously, Richard, elevated by the full big band that I got in to play the musical
Was it a full
underscore
big band,
for you. It's sort of a big band, yeah. Anyway, thanks, Mark, for doing that. Really appreciate it. And a great list. If you agree or disagree, do let us know, and let us know why. Email us podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk.
Yeah.
Great. What next, Richard? What happens now in the Gerry Anderson podcast?
Who have you been talking to recently, Jamie?
Well, I've been talking to all sorts of people.
Yeah, okay.
Most of it's not repeatable for this podcast. But I had a great chat with Marcus Hearn, Dad's biographer, Dad's third and final biographer, who got to know Dad very well between 2001 and Dad's death in 2012. I wanted to get some information from Marcus about the man himself, what drove him, things that sort of struck Marcus about Dad's personality, particular elements of their time together that helped him understand Dad more deeply. And Marcus very kindly shared those with me in a long chat. So this is part 1 of my chat with Marcus Hearn.
My name is Marcus Hearn, and I was a friend of Gerry Anderson's for some years, and I was his publisher for some years, as well as being his official biographer. And I continue to live in the world of supermarionation because my company continues to publish books about his work.
You do. I mean, you also do other things too, don't you? What might other people know you for now, Marcus?
For the last 25 years, I've worked very closely with Hammer Films. I'm the company's archivist and historian, and I'm currently the editor of Doctor Who magazine.
Amazing set of titles there.
Yeah.
And jobs.
Yeah, I've managed to avoid having a real job for quite some time now. Let's hope I can keep it up.
You're a man-child, essentially.
That's right, yes, that's right.
Playing in Kiddy's world.
That's right, yeah.
Nostalgia.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know the answer to this, I don't think. How did you meet Dad?
I met your father through a director called John Glenn, because I had ghosted John's autobiography, which was principally about the James Bond films. And it was, I think, while we were working on that John suggested that I get in touch with his good friend Gerry Anderson, because aside from directing all the James Bond films in the 1980s, John had directed several episodes of Space Precinct. And I think he'd reunited with Gerry at a party or something, and Gerry had already started work on his memoirs with an author called Simon Archer, who very sadly died way before his time. And the book had been completed by somebody else and had been published. And now Gerry had a deal with the BBC to publish a new edition. And he wanted the book updated. He wanted a new collaborator. He always respected John very much, Gerry. I know that he was thrilled when John agreed to direct Space Precinct, because I remember Gerry telling me that when I first asked John, if he'd direct Space Precinct, I almost fell off my chair when he said yes, because he was a Bond director. And so he always held great stock by his opinion. And so when John told him that he'd had fun working with me on his autobiography, he gave Gerry my number. And as is often the case with these things, I had to play it slightly cool when Gerry rang me for the first time, because I didn't want to come across as being too enthusiastic, as being too keen, because I'm going to name drop here, but
Fred Marcus, go on.
Yeah, but later on, when I worked with George Lucas on his memoir, but I did actually ask some of George's people within the Lucasfilm organisation why I'd been asked to do this, and the answer was that basically I hadn't come across as too much of a fanboy. I'm paraphrasing now, but I think George wanted to work with somebody who had a broader understanding of film and television and of his influences, his broader influences, rather than just somebody who was focused entirely on Star Wars. And so that's how I got the job with George. And I think it's very similar. I think that's probably how I got the job with Gerry as well, because he. I remember the phone rang one evening, and the voice at the end, it was a very quiet, soft-spoken voice at the end of the phone, said, "Oh, hello, can I speak to Marcus Hearn?" He said, "This is Gerry Anderson," and of course, the first thing that, the first instinct that came into my head, the first thing I wanted to say to him was that I've just watched an episode of Stingray on BBC Two, because I had just watched an episode of Stingray, and I thought, no, I didn't do that. And we had a long chat, and I think he was kind of sounding me out. I think he was kind of interviewing me, and then we met, and we got on very well. And so, yeah, it's a very long answer to your question, but it was a recommendation from John Glenn that I worked with Gerry on his book.
Perfect. And so, in the run-up to that first meeting, just to give it some context, Marcus, had you watched a lot of? I mean, obviously you said you watched Stingray.
I watched it that evening. Yeah.
You watched at least one episode of Stingray, but from being a kid, how much did the world of Gerry Anderson mean to you? What had you grown up watching, or was it just I've heard of him before, I'll work with him? Oh no,
it was huge. No, I was a fan. I wasn't ever a member of Fanderson, but I've been to some of their conventions. I remember going to a convention in Holborn in the 1980s, late 80s, I think it was, 89 or maybe 90, just for the opportunity it presented to watch an episode of the Secret Service, because I was obsessed with the Secret Service, because you couldn't see it. It was only ever screened in Birmingham, and which is not where I grew up, and you couldn't get it on video or anything. And when I heard that you could go to this place and you could actually watch some episodes of the Secret Service, and so I went to this Fanderson convention, which, from what I gather, has got a bit of a dodgy reputation. I mean, I've spoken to several people about this convention subsequently, and they said, "Oh God, you went to that? Wasn't it awful?" And I said, "Was it?" And they said, "Oh, this happened and that happened, and so-and-so didn't turn up, and it wasn't very well, organised or anything." And my only memory is that it was fantastic. It was bloody brilliant, because I sat in a room and I watched the Secret Service. That's all I wanted to do. So no, I was a fan. Absolutely, I was a fan. And as a child, I grew up in the Anglia television region. ITV fans, and so I remember Joe 90 probably loomed largest in my legend, I think, when I was a kid. But even went into the 80s, I remember they used to screen, and I hope this isn't my memory playing tricks, but they used to screen Fireball XL5 at 9:30 on weekday mornings during school holidays, and I remember that very well. And I remember that the Anglia ident was this silver statue of a guy standing on a horse, of a guy sitting on a horse, and it revolved on this podium to the sound of, I think, Handel's water music or something. And I just remember the interminable wait for this for this knight in shining armour to finish spinning around on this podium so I could actually get to watch Fireball XL5 every morning. It was interminable. I don't have such clear memories of Thunderbirds as a child. I mean, I did love Thunderbirds, but for me it was about Joe 90. That was the big one, I think, for me. So yes, I mean, I just adored this stuff, and I'd written for fanzines. I'd written for the Century 21 fanzine. And as I got into my teenage years, I was introduced to UFO. I think around 1988, I think I saw UFO for the first time. And when I was a student, that was shown, again in the Anglia region, that was shown in the middle of the night. I used to screen it around midnight. And I remember watching it then, and when they started showing Captain Scarlet. And it was just a cult thing for students. And so yes, so by the time I did first speak to your dad, which must have been around 1999, 2000, I think I got to know him, I think. And I was a huge fan, but I was careful not to overplay that, because I think it might have freaked him out.
Yeah, I was going to say, so you were a geek, but not a card-carrying fanboy.
No, I wasn't literally a member of Fanderson. I just used to go to the conventions. But I mean, I don't think that's what he wanted to hear. You know, I mean, obviously he held the fans of his work in very, very high esteem. And you know, I don't want anyone to interpret this as me being disparaging about Fanderson, because I think Fanderson's a wonderful organisation, and you know, I'm a massive fan of the stuff. I just thought in that particular instance, it wouldn't have done me any favours to come across as too sort of, well, I want to meet you, a bit like that, because I think that would have freaked him out slightly. I don't think that's what he wanted to hear. And the fact that I'd had this association with John Glenn, who he held in such high regard, and because he loved the Bond films so much, to Gerry, the Bond films were a real high watermark of British filmmaking. And the fact that he'd been able to work with John Glenn, I think that was a great feather in his cap as well, I think. And so the fact that I had this association, in his mind at least, I was good enough for John Glenn. So maybe I'd be good enough for him. Maybe that's what he was
thinking.
Just maybe. Well, he had to sound me out.
Of course.
Yeah.
So you played it down a little bit, but what was the first meeting like? Where was it? Was it in his posh office at Pinewood, or was it in the small?
No, it was in his home office. I remember he met me at Reading, and he drove me to his home office, and we had a fascinating conversation on the way. Fascinating conversation. I remember one of the first things he told me when we were in the car. He showed me his car. He drove a Lexus. Yeah. And he had a mobile phone which popped up from some sort of device that was to the left of the driving seat. It was on some sort of swivel or some sort of pivot. And I remember his phone rang, and this thing sort of popped up from this sort of hidden compartment, Thunderbird style. And I said, "That's very impressive, Gerry. I've never seen anything like that before." And he said to me, "Well, actually, it was my idea, And he said, I mentioned it to Lexus or something, and they incorporated it into the car. And I didn't get anything." He said, "My wife didn't even get a bunch of flowers." He said he was very frustrated about that. I think I'm pretty certain I remember this correctly. I think it was the first time I'd ever seen a sat nav in a car as well. I think he had. It may not have been on that occasion, but that was the first time I'd ever seen a screen with a sat nav in a car. And I just remember thinking, my God, this is the cockpit of Thunderbird 2. I mean, you could see the essence of the man. I mean, he was, he loved technology, as you know.
Absolutely, yes. And
he was fascinated by engineering. But this extended not only to his work, but to his personal life as well. So I think that during that initial car journey, I got an insight, really, into the man in more ways than one. We drove past a golf course during my very first meeting with him. I remember that, and I said to him, "Do you play golf?" Because John Glenn, is obsessed with golf. He loves golf, and Gerry just looked at me and said, "The day I start playing golf," he said, "you have permission to shoot me in the head." I remember him saying that. And then we arrived at his lovely house, And I remember being impressed with the light switches. Actually, I remember he had very stylish light switches in his house. But there wasn't an awful lot in the house to really indicate his career. There was a utility room that had a stingray picture over the washing machine. I remember.
Which is still there. Yeah.
Which is still there, is it? Okay, quite right. And there was a glass case with some dinky toys and things in it.
Which is also still there now.
Good. I'm glad to hear it. But yeah, beautiful house. And I met Mary, your mother, who's lovely. And then we retired to his office at the end of the garden, where there were some bits and bobs. The Thunderbirds Are Go poster on the wall, that sort of thing. And all the time, of course, one has to sort of, think, stay cool. Yes, you're in Gerry Anderson's office. You're talking to Gerry Anderson. It's okay. You're here for work. No, don't ask him for his autograph. All that stuff, It's just, and I loved him. I loved him from the moment I first met him.
Oh, well, that's a lovely first memory, first impression.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say he said something rude to you or offended you on the car journey.
Well, he was often rude to me, but never in a way that actually offended me. He had such a dry sense of humour, your father, and it was sometimes hard to tell whether he was being serious or not. But I got on well with him. Very well with him. And so we started work on the book. I mean, I'm thinking this must have been 2000 when I first met him, because we did spend quite a lot of time working on the book. I certainly remember I was there on the day of 9/11. I remember that because we were halfway through a recording session, and the phone rang, and it was his then business partner John Needham, who was calling to say, Gerry, whatever you're doing, you should stop and you should switch on a television. And I remember I turned off the cassette recorder, because it was cassettes in those days. I turned off the cassette recorder, we went to the house, we turned on the television, and it was just as this horror was unfolding in front of us. And I remember, your father looking at me just saying, I don't think we can do any more work today. And I said, yeah, I think you're right. And then there was a debate, because your mum came into the room, there was a debate about how I was actually going to get home, because there was this absolute lockdown and trains were being cancelled, and everyone was in a sort of blind panic. It was so I remember that vividly. And I remember there's something your father remembered actually up until the very last time I saw him, actually, because obviously, as I think everyone listening to this knows about the terrible illness that took hold of him towards the end of his life. And I didn't spend any time with him at the very end, but the last time I did see him, and his memory was going, but he remembered that, and it was something that really stuck in his mind. He said, "Oh yes, I remember you were here when that happened, weren't you?" And I said, "Yes." And in a way, it was lovely to hear him say that, because I knew that I knew that he was getting ill, and I think when you know someone who has that terrible disease, and sometimes when they do come out with things like that, it's actually quite heartening, isn't it? It's actually quite...
Yeah, it's a strange sense of reassurance there.
Yeah, but he remembered that. And I'm jumping ahead now, obviously, but he was still talking about deals that he wanted to do and things right at the end, and I said, "Oh, never mind, Gerry," because one of the running jokes we always used to have, one of the jokes was, I said, "Gerry, if it doesn't work out, you can always go back to being a plasterer, can't you?" Which was what he was trained in. And he said, "You know about that?" And he said, "Oh, of course you do. You wrote my biography, didn't you?" Like that.
And so, know by now.
Yeah, little things like that. So little flashes at the end were still there, just remnants, of our old relationship. So that was lovely to hear. But yes, I was there working with him when the Twin Towers fell in America.
And I was at an afternoon proms for schools thing in London that day.
Were you?
Yeah, and we went in on the train. And it must have happened while we were on the train. None of us had mobile phones at the time. Went into the proms, and they said at the start, due to today's horrific events, we're going to change the programme of music. And all of us were like, what's happened? Nobody knew. We went back from there, back onto the train, out of London. Nobody was any the wiser. And it was only when I got home, and Dad was still probably having, taken you back, and then went back to sit in front of the telly. He was sat in front of the Rolling News just watching it, and said, "Have you seen this? Come here." So weirdly, I also remember that day quite vividly, but not you, Marcus, sorry.
Well, I'd obviously found a way to get home. When did we first meet then? Have we met at that point or not?
No, not then, but I think sometime.
Very shortly afterwards, I think. Very shortly afterwards. I remember us all going out for... I remember us definitely going out for a meal. All four of us going out for a meal when we finished the book.
Right.
I remember that. I remember finishing the manuscript and we all went out together. Do you remember that?
Do you know what? Was it for a Chinese or?
It was in a local pub, and I remember that one of your dad's favourite pieces of music was Bolero, because it was played at his funeral, wasn't it? I think.
Yeah, Bolero was one of his.
Yes, and I remember him while he was waiting, because he was in a very good mood because we'd just finished the manuscript, and I remember him waiting for his food to arrive, and I remember him tapping out the rhythm on the table and singing it to himself.
He was an obsessive table rhythm tapper. So.
Well, his mind he just never stopped, did he? He just had one of those. I mean, you couldn't quite see the cogs turning in his head, but he was never off duty.
No.
Your dad. He was probably, and I mean this as a compliment, he was probably the most driven man I think I've ever met in my life, which must have been. Obviously, it meant that he achieved great things during that lifetime, but it must have made it sometimes difficult for his family and friends, because he was so I mean, I'm trying to avoid the word obsessive, because it's not, because
I was going to use that word.
Yeah, because it's a pejorative word, isn't it? And I don't mean it that way, because I admired him enormously, but he was certainly the most career-minded, and he was a very person, one of the most career-minded people I've ever met, and the most driven man I think I've ever met, and he was very deeply competitive, wasn't he? Deeply competitive. Yeah. But, it was that energy, he was able to channel that energy into achieving great things for many years.
Exactly. So, yeah, I don't think it can be pejorative if it was, the result was so positive.
In that case, absolutely, yes, absolutely. And I think that...
Let's say obsessive.
Yeah, and I think that it did make the work of the biographer slightly difficult, because, so for example, to draw a comparison with John Glenn, who I just recently worked with at the time, John Glenn was at the point of retiring, I think, when I worked with him on his memoirs. In fact, we took a break from his memoirs while he actually completed what turned out to be his final film. And then when we reconvened, I think that John had basically decided that was enough. It was time to stop. And I think that John was at a point in his life when he was making the transition from being competitive to becoming reflective, I think. Yeah. And that's where a biographer needs his or her subject to be. You need a subject to have entered the reflective phase of their life, ideally. Whereas I don't think, from that very first meeting with your dad up to the very last meeting, when I was so pleased that he'd remembered the events of that terrible day, 9/11, all that stuff, I don't think I ever saw him enter a truly, wholly reflective phase of his life. He never stopped, at least while I knew him, he never stopped being in the game. He never stopped looking for the next opportunity. He never stopped trying to make the next thing happen.
Yeah, true. Very true.
Which meant that he lived... not necessarily in the moment, but he always lived almost for tomorrow, always, even when he was getting quite ill. And so when you spend a long time with someone, months and months, recording hours and hours and hours of tape, trying to get them to look back, looking back was something... Your father didn't mind looking back, because he enjoyed sort of celebrating his past achievements, but in one respect he was... Not in that respect, he wasn't terribly reflective, and in one key respect, he was probably not only the most driven man I've ever met, but also one of the least nostalgic.
Yes.
I don't think nostalgia interested him at all, really. No. And that was also challenging from a writing point of view.
I was going to say, because he certainly the least nostalgic man you've ever met is something I hear time and time again, and he didn't take any pleasure really in sort of bathing in nostalgia.
No.
He was happy to look back in quite an analytical way and give you a list of things that happened. And if there was a good anecdote in there that he thought was funny, he'd give you some time with it. But did that make the process difficult of actually getting to the nitty-gritty of stuff? Because there are some major events, especially in his early life and later on, the death of his brother, troubles at home, being evacuated, all that kind of stuff. And then later on, obviously, marital difficulties with Sylvia, the divorce with Betty, his first one, all those kind of things, which you think actually probably had quite a big impact on him personally. But I get the impression that he would have been reluctant to give you much in terms of reflection on those stories. So how was it covering personal stuff?
Ex-wives are always very difficult, or ex-husbands are always very difficult for the biographer, and one had to deal with that with some sensitivity. He talked about his first wife with some sensitivity, actually, and a great deal of regret, I must admit. His second wife, much less so. I think that one way I found to unlock the memories and trying to get the events in the right order was that one thing that your father was very generous about was actually giving credit to other people. He was very, very keen that we talked about people like Christine Glanville, who I think he just adored, absolutely adored, and Bob Bell, who he loved. And so the people that he wanted to talk about and celebrate, he was very, very generous. And so that was one way of actually doing it, was actually talking about their achievements. He often said to me, on several occasions at least, he said, I didn't mind what credits people would get. I would share the credits around. As long as it was my name above the title, then I'll be very happy to credit people as producers, directors, writers, etc. And, over the years, it's become clear to me that he was an extremely generous man in that respect, because I think some people receive credits on shows as writers, and maybe some producing credits that in a harder environment they maybe wouldn't have received.
Yep.
I think, but he wanted them to get their name in a good place on the credits because he valued them.
Yes, absolutely. You always got that sense of value and recognition and loyalty across all of it, I think.
And yet, he was not exactly what you describe as a team player. I mean, he was very happy to have a team working for him, but he had to be at the head of that team. He found it very difficult, I think, to collaborate in certain key areas. And I think the older he got, and the more the world changed, the more the world of filmmaking changed, the more that made things difficult for him in a way, because everybody, there were lots of people who wanted to work on a Gerry Anderson production. And then problems would arise because they would eventually realise that a Gerry Anderson production had to be a Gerry Anderson production. People could work for him as a team, but they couldn't necessarily work with him in that respect. And I got the sense that got harder for him. The collaboration aspect got harder for him the older he got. Yeah.
That sounds about right. And also, I suppose, the things that he might class as collaborative efforts often ended in difficulties or heartache or the collapse of the relationship, be it a marital one or a business relationship. So I could see why he became more and more reluctant to do that.
Yeah. I mean, obviously his marriage to your mum was very, very successful and lasted a very long time. And
lasted to the end. So.
Absolutely. And she's a wonderful woman. I love your mum. She's great. And I think that it was, she didn't, unlike Sylvia, she didn't, I don't think your mother was ever that interested in having a career in film or television. I mean, I know she did have a career in film and television, but it's not the be all and end all to your mum, is it? She's got other interests in life and other things as well. And I think that that probably helped things, probably.
Yeah, I think they probably struck a better balance there than had happened previously.
Yeah. And, obviously, I mean, it goes without saying that he just absolutely adored your mum. Just worshipped the ground she walked on. He loved her.
Quite right too, yeah. Quite right too. In terms, not in his personal life, but in terms of his career as a whole, when you're talking about it in that way, serially, and examining it in not quite forensic detail, but doing all those bits, going show by show and chronologically, and forcing him to dig in. What do you feel like his overall feeling and reflective state was when he was doing that? So what was his overall feeling when looking back on his career, do you think? Was it one of constant frustration, or were there highlight moments, or was it, always... Because I always got the impression with him that whatever he did, and this is a natural thing for creatives, I think, whatever you do, when you look back on it, you can kind of only see the faults to a greater or less degree. But he was, when you were doing it was around the time, I guess, of the second Thunderbirds revival of the 90s into the early 2000s. So he was being constantly faced with the success and the renewed success of it. So how was he when he was sort of thinking about his career in the shows?
That's a very good question. I think that I certainly remember that Captain Scarlet was on, because I remember Captain Scarlet, the episode of Captain Scarlet was cancelled, in fact, after the 9/11 attack. I mean, let's face it, Captain Scarlet's a show that's pretty much about terrorism, isn't it? So it's not really surprising, I think. I think he'd learned to live with his past. I think that he was a man who would have liked to have left it all behind and just forged ahead. But there was a huge weight of gravity, I think, on your father, and it came probably from every journalist he ever met. It came from every fan who ever asked for an autograph. It came from Fanderson, who of course he valued enormously. And I think that it was not as easy for him to leave his past behind as he would have liked to have done, because he came to the realization certainly before I met him, certainly in the 1980s, he came to the realization that people actually loved his work, and there was an endearing love for his work. And I think in a way this forced him possibly to re-examine it, I think, and to reappraise it in his own mind, I think. And that's why I was there. That's why we were doing the second edition of this book.
Well, how interesting.
Thanks, Marcus. More of that next week.
Yeah, and what's nice about that, it's sort of a very different interview to the type we've had before.
It is. Well, it's not just recollections of working on the show, and nor is it recollections of enjoying the shows as a kid. I mean, Marcus was leaning towards some of that, and I think he wants to come back and talk about UFO in particular, which he really loves.
Oh, great.
But no, just to get a third-party perspective from somebody who was acting as a professional biographer, also had an appreciation of his work as a fan, but also got to know him as a friend, gives a really different story, and I hope you found some interesting bits and pieces in there. If you enjoyed that, you're really going to enjoy next week. We've got some even more in-depth stuff. So thanks for listening to that. I hope you enjoyed it.
No, but it's really interesting, because most of us that have worked with your dad on a professional basis have just that, a professional relationship.
Absolutely.
So very interesting to hear a sort of a slightly different account.
Yes, and plenty more from Marcus next week. And it looks like he'll be back again to do different types of interviews about the shows and sort of technicalities and stuff, and bits and pieces he learned from Dad along the way.
Excellent.
So there you go.
Very good. Yeah, great.
So that's that. You should definitely subscribe if you want to be notified about next week and beyond, if you want to hear more from Marcus.
Yeah, if you want to have a listen to some previous interviewees like Chris Packham, Sophia Miles, Wayne Forrester, and
David Quantick.
Yeah, all these names, I can't remember any of them now off the top of my head.
Sophie Aldred.
Yeah, that's right, yes. Do go back and listen to previous modcasts, as I'm going to call it now.
Yes. Is that Winner in the Past? I don't know.
That's right. And maybe pick up on a couple that you haven't heard before. All sorts of people there waiting to be listened to.
Yeah.
In the meantime, I think it might be time to move on desperately and get some sanity into proceedings.
Yes, there's only one way to do that.
Well, it's time to wheel in Chris Dale and the Marvellous Randomiser.
I'll take his Hannibal Lecter mask off so he can talk. Here he goes.
Captain Ogre, Spectrum, sir. I'm here to take charge of security.
Oh, hello, Captain. Listen, about this Mysteron threat against my life, surely they must have more important people to bump off than me. We've not even covered a Captain Scarlet episode for quite a while now. Do I really have to stay in this underground bunker?
It's very necessary, sir. Your safety is Spectrum's responsibility. You'll be safe here.
Oh, you're forgetting how well I know that a Spectrum maximum security building is one of the least safe places on Earth. Oh well, since you're here, you may as well press the button on the randomiser for me.
Thanks. That should have done the trick.
Ah, excellent. Sounds like your colleagues up top are doing another sterling job.
Everything's fine. Nothing to report.
SIG, Captain Magenta.
Oh, classic. Anyway, what does the printout say? Oh, I recognise that look. It's a bad one today, isn't it?
It'd be deceiving you to say it wasn't.
Right, let me see. Ah, yes. A good show, but definitely a curiously lackluster episode, if I remember correctly. Ah, well, let's get it over with. Here's Stingray with Subterranean Sea.
We'll handle it.
I hope you're right.
Anything can happen in the next half hour.
So here we are with Subterranean Sea, and there are episodes of each of the Gerry Anderson shows that I know better than others. And then there are some where I know that I've seen them multiple times. Many of the early supercars are like this. I know I've seen them. Do I remember anything about them? Very little. And I have a feeling that with Subterranean Sea, there's probably a good reason for that. I just have this odd feeling that nothing actually happens. Anyway, we're kicking things off in a very relatively, for this show actually quite surprisingly, unconvincing underwater base.
We're through the Earth's mantle. Wonderful, Andrews. It's been a long
Soon we'll be able to tap the pockets of Stallman's gas. Oh, no, we're not doing that.
Heaven knows what life that sea holds. We've got to find out.
Okay, so this is potentially a really exciting, interesting discovery with far-reaching consequences. I have a feeling none of this is going to lead to anything, but let's find out.
It's great to be going on vacation. I wonder how the girls are making out.
See, because they're girls, they're having trouble with their packing. They can't close the suitcase. They've also got lots more suitcases.
On our way. Sure thing, Troy.
You see, the joke is because women. It's like, I hate that stuff. And I think, didn't Thunderbirds do that? Isn't there a shot of like Fab One's boot
He probably just
overflowing with suitcases and such? I want to say that's in Thunderbirds 6. Also, Fireball XL5 Space Vacation did the same joke. It's not funny, is it? I mean, maybe in the era this was made. I'm sure even then it probably wasn't like a particularly groundbreaking joke.
Why, Stingray? You've got other vessels you could use.
Yeah, I have, but I happen to think Troy and
But we haven't had them built yet. We only have the model of Stingray. I'm noticing, actually, for the first time, and I can't believe I'm only just noticing this. Again, it's another instance of the amazing attention to detail on these shows. The rusting in the underwater section of the launch bay, the doors to the launch tube are sort of rusting around the edges, and there's a pump there. It looks like a pump near the door that's all rusted and rotting. It's it all makes it look so much more realistic. It's very well done. And again, that's stock footage from multiple other episodes, so I'm not sure why I'm giving the credit to this one.
Drilling cam from Stingray. Permission to enter base.
Stingray from drilling cam. Proceed.
Well, from the exterior, the drilling camp model doesn't actually have any rooms big enough to house Stingray. Stingray came sort of cruising up to it, and it's visibly bigger than every room on the base, but now suddenly we're in this sort of elevator dock thing.
Our aim, Captain, has been to find out what is beneath the Earth's crust. Now that question mark can be removed. We know what is down there, at this point anyway. An ocean.
An ocean? So where do we come in?
That is your job to explore.
Why would you need our famous ocean-going vessel to investigate an ocean? I cannot get my head around this.
Encounter. We've taken
Come on, Troy. You must have a vague inkling of why you're here.
When do we start?
Anytime you're ready. An elevator will lower you 2 miles.
We're a very casual scientific expedition here, Captain. You know, it's a massive historically important discovery, but you know, whenever you get round to it. This is another very odd element of this episode, which I suppose has to be there to get the story going. They've found this subterranean sea, but they've already built a perfectly functional lift mechanism to get Stingray down there, like a proper walled shaft. It's not just a hole, it has got like support beams and everything extending right down beneath the Earth's core. Or beneath the Earth's crust, I should say, not beneath the core. That would be silly. And this is not a very silly episode by any means.
We're deeper than any craft's ever been before. The meter just can't gauge it. Okay.
You'd think after the trouble they had in the Big Gun, when they went... They did find a subterranean sea in that episode as well, didn't they? And they were amazed by it then. And they had Stingray specially reinforced to handle the stresses. You'd think their instruments might have been updated when those hull modifications were done.
They're giving off a green light now.
Troy has now acquired a snazzy pair of sunglasses from we know not where.
There must be a pretty strong current down here.
You can say that again.
Yeah, you guys are visibly out of control, and yet you're treating this as a nice leisurely Sunday stroll.
We're picking up speed.
Oh, maybe we ought to do something, Phones.
Look out for those rocks!
What rocks? Oh, never mind. We found them. There's some more rocks here. Let's crash into those as well.
We're gonna roll over!
This is the point where you would maybe recommend Stingray have seatbelts. I mean, Marina could have suffered major internal injuries the knock she's just taken. I do, as much as the effects sometimes aren't quite up to the usual standard when it comes to things like this, I do like these shots of Stingray being knocked around and battered and bruised. There is that one terrible shot of it I think it's in a whirlpool. I think it's from Treasure Down Below, where one of the back sections is just sort of snapped and is pointing downwards. That's always a terrible shot that they keep coming back to, but I do like seeing Stingray getting crashed and buried and various other terrible things happening to it.
I don't get it, Phones.
In the close-up shot, my left hand was operating the controls and I was wearing my aqua suit, and now in the wider shot I'm working it with my... Oh no, wait. It's now my left hand in uniform, but I'm still working it with my right hand in this other shot. What gives?
There were thousands of feet of water above us.
Not now, so let's get out and take a look. Better put on our skin suits and breathing gear.
Yeah, what's the worst that could happen? The water might suddenly come back? Oh, I've given away the twist. Yeah, that's the twist for this episode, by the way.
So let's take no chances. Give her a mask.
Yeah, I never thought of that.
What exactly is this expedition supposed to come up with?
Okay, Marina.
I mean, you would expect there to be more to this supposedly monumental discovery than just, I don't know, just go down there and see what's what. I don't know. You're not even, like, recording any of this. You would think one of the scientists as well would want to come with them for this, but no, we'll just leave it to the Stingray crew. That's fine. We have this long shot of the Stingray crew walking through this subterranean world, and the walking doesn't look any better just because we're shooting it from far away. It does. The set does look quite nice, though. There's this sort of nice rolling fog along the bottom, and a lot of the rocks are red to suggest heat. I'm just... What is this story?
One moment this is an ocean, and then it becomes a desert.
That just feels like the core idea of this show, of this particular episode. It's not a strong enough idea to build an entire story around. Nothing is actually happening. Now, I suppose it's a nice change of pace that they find this new world, essentially, and they've not run into sort of, wahaha, I am evil Ray Barrett voiced bad guy, and I am going to take over the world with just me and my one ship. I kind of like that they've not done that, but they've not really replaced it with well, anything. Oh, is that a gecko? Oh, there's a sweet little gecko there watching them. But, I mean, they're just plodding along. This is Stingray. We should have a bit more action and excitement than this.
Hey, we must be close to the center of the Earth.
Yeah, that's where the heat's coming from.
Hey, I didn't figure that this subterranean sea might be close to the center of the Earth. Wow. More wandering.
What's wrong, Marina?
She's bored. I'm bored.
Bones, the water's coming back. Come on, back to Stingray and fast.
I love the way that this catches them completely by surprise. It's like the water vanished without explanation. Did you not consider the possibility that it might return just as quickly? Why did you stray so far from Stingray? Why didn't you just stay there and make sure things were okay before you wandered off? With no real plan of anything. This episode is like... I don't know, this feels like the sort of story that a child would write in a school classroom. That ultimately it has Stingray and the Stingray characters in it, but nothing actually happens. Oh, we've made this major discovery. Will it change anything? No. Does it make any sense? No. I mean, where has the water gone? Why has it now come back? More importantly, what happened to that sweet little gecko? Again, I suppose it's admirable that there's no answers, but it's also kind of a big pile of so what this episode. They go for a wander, they get their feet wet, and now they're running back to Stingray. Big deal? Like, they're all swimming back to Stingray. You would expect, with all the currents and such going on, maybe they could have stretched some drama out of this by maybe one of them's got swept slightly away from Stingray and they're holding on to the top of the periscope or something. But no, they're just back and everything's okay. They have essentially taken the Monty Python and the Holy Grail approach to scientific discovery with this. It's just, run away, run away. Some nice, pretty lighting effects on these rocks and some jolly music do not change the fact that there is no story here. I find this baffling. Why would you include this potentially very interesting and exciting story idea of this whole world beneath the Earth's crust? And then it's like, oh wow, thank goodness we went there, found nothing, and then went home.
The subterranean sea has a tide like any other sea, except it's a little more forceful.
And nothing interesting lives in it.
Maybe many times a day. This sea has a flood tide every time.
Oh, that's sweet. Oh, that is so sweet. While Troy and Phones are talking here, Marina is in the background picking up all of the books that have fallen off the bookshelf.
Well, let's get back to civilization.
Oh, she's a good girl.
I guess there's no use trying to radio for help.
How about the sound scanner?
Maybe the gecko would come and help. I'm not sure it was a gecko, by the way. If anyone knows what little reptilian chap that was that appeared in this episode, do please let me know. He is essentially the highlight of the story. Oh, we're not going to pad this out now, are we? We're not going to drag on looking for a way out with our air dripping away.
3 hours and the same no.
Oh, we are.
Oh, this is hopeless, Troy.
We've got to keep trying. It's all we can do.
Well, usually you do a bit more than try. You come up with interesting and at least exciting stories. I want the regular Stingray where stuff happens. Please.
Still the same now.
Dull and monotonous.
We're nearly there, Phones.
Are they heading up to heaven? That's what the music seems to be implying? Oh no, they've arrived in a nice little lagoon. So you've got to imagine that the guys at the underwater research camp are feeling pretty silly right now, knowing that there was all this time a back door into their subterranean sea.
I wonder what part of the world we're in.
I don't know.
That just leads right to a beautiful deserted tropical island.
I've been to a lagoon.
Oh no, not deserted, because there's a girl on it, isn't there? So yeah, the Stingray crew, minus Atlanta for some reason, are now having their planned vacation on this island paradise that they found. There's no other signs of civilization except this one native girl dancing. And I've always imagined that this was like some stranded survivor of a shipwreck or a crash or something who was desperate for rescue. And Troy was just like, okay, we'll take you home, but first, you've got to dance for me, woman. You've got to wait on me hand and foot. Marina's playing the guitar. What are you going to do?
Wish you were here. All my love, Troy. Isn't that just my luck?
Ah, well, you see, Atlanta, you do not deserve, actually, to be treated the way you are at the end of this episode. Why can't you fly out and join in their holiday? So they get a nice holiday, and Atlanta gets nothing. What did she do wrong? I don't like that. I don't like that Atlanta gets short shrift there. She has a hard enough time with the whole Troy, Marina, Atlanta love triangle nonsense. Anyway, that was Subterranean Sea. Barely enough there to qualify as an episode of Stingray. It's just a huge pile of nothing. What was that? It's one of those episodes where you just think, really? Was there literally nothing else on the table that you had to go and shoot that? And it's so... From like 50 plus years on, you do think you had all these wonderful people and all this wonderful show. You could have made something better than this. I would gladly sacrifice this episode for the thought that they could have put the same resources to making something even halfway decent. And it's not... There's nothing here that sort of makes me angry. It's just like, what was that? There was barely any story there. There was barely enough to fill a postage stamp. One of the lesser entries of Stingray, not one of the worst, but I certainly see why it hasn't lingered in my memory as much as some of the other, much better episodes. Toodaloo.
Stingray! Stingray!
Great.
Yeah, see, Chris doesn't like that story, and I understand why, because he's right. Nothing happens at all, really, and it doesn't really make any sense. But when I was a kid, I loved Subterranean Sea. I watched it over and over and over again.
Did you?
It's just such a simple setup. There's nothing really to understand about it, other than the element of exploration and going somewhere kind of scary and unknown and going so deep underground, beneath the Earth's crust and into the mantle and finding a subterranean sea. Yes. And I just remember feeling so tense as a kid watching the crew of Stingray trying to rush back as the tide came in and refilled this underground cavern so that they wouldn't drown. I mean, there's rubbish human legs running stuff in there, which was so silly even then. But I really enjoyed it, and it was really simplistic in a way that I think a kind of sort of 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old could understand and just enjoy the sense of exploration and adventure.
Absolutely.
So sorry, Chris, but I'm going to respectfully disagree with you there from the point of view of my inner 4-year-old.
Yeah, great. Well, what do you think at home, listeners? Do tweet us or email us and let us know what you think of Subterranean Sea. I'm going to watch this one immediately afterwards. I've not seen it, so I'm going to see which side of the fence I jump.
Well, I know which side you'll be on Chris's side. Everybody will be on Chris's side. I know it. Yeah. I know it's childhood nostalgia that is driving me with that. But great. I did love it. So thanks, Chris. Another randomiser next week. Marcus Hearn Part 2 next week in Pod 36.
Yes.
It seems so weird the way these numbers rack up, but I suppose that's the nature of the numbers.
It is indeed. Yeah, that's it. So yes, do join us again next week. But in the meantime, please remember to subscribe so you get a notification when the next episode drops. And also, don't forget to rate us and leave us a little review. And then share us with all your friends as well. Tweet about us. Let people know that we're here, because the more people that listen, well, the more exciting it all becomes for everybody. Especially me.
Especially you and I, of course.
Yeah.
And this week, actually, if you fancy doing us another favour, if you're not already subscribed to the Gerry Anderson YouTube channel, do pop over to YouTube, youtube.com/Gerry Anderson TV. Hit subscribe and also hit the little bell next to the subscribe button so you get notified when we upload new videos.
Oh, very good.
So there you go.
Yeah.
Go and do that.
Great
That'd
idea.
be nice. Thanks.
Yeah, and in the meantime, have a great week and we'll see you next time.
In Pod 36.
Yes.
Goodbye.
See you then. Bye.
Stage 1 complete.
Let's go.
Spectrum is green.
Oh.
Yeah, skin of our teeth.
Evening's not good.
Yeah.
I think there was some good stuff in there, actually, but it was a bit...
Yeah, but you've got to trawl through it now, Jamie.
A bit diluted with...
I know. I'm sorry, don't know what I'm saying.
The Gerry Anderson Codcast. We've had the Gerry Anderson Codcast, the Gerry Anderson Modcast, the Gerry Anderson Podcast, the Gerry Anderson Dogcast. Yeah, who knows where we might go next.
I like the sound of the Gerry Anderson Dogcast, I must say.
We have that when my dogs come in, don't we?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's right. Yes, it could run and run. People would subscribe to that. You wait.
It could run and run until the end of the alphabet, and we'd have to avoid a few because they're probably rude.
The Zogcast.
Yes, exactly. There's two. The problem is there's two Zogcasts, aren't there?
Yes.
The X one and the Z one.
Yeah, that would be difficult, wouldn't it?
Yeah. I mean, we're sounding a bit now like two sort of drunk idiots at a bus stop at the end of an evening. Just
No. What we're
nonsense.
sounding like, Jamie, is one drunk idiot at a bus stop who won't stop talking to the other perfectly sober businessman who's had a busy day at work and just wants to get home and have his dinner.
I thought you already had your dinner.
I have had my dinner, that's true.
I haven't had mine yet, so I better go and
All
cook.
right. Yeah, what are you waiting for then?
But thanks, Dickie.
That's all right. See you next time.
See you in a week.
Bye.
Bye.
Has he gone?
Yes.